Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Relationship Advice for Women. We have our special guest, Miss Mari, and she is going to be sharing her testimony on breaking the silence of domestic violence. That's one of the segments that we have been doing. My name is Jonna Bateman, and I come to you from Atlanta, Georgia, residing in Covington, the metro Atlanta area. I just thank you all so much for allowing me to bring these different segments and bringing these different guests who have real life testimony. You all know by now that this is not no cookie cutter podcast where people just have these nice stories that they want to tell you. It's raw and it's real, and it is Miss Mari's truth. So go ahead, tell us about the relationship that you were in that went sour.
I was 27 years old. That was 28 years ago. I met this guy at a party, and he walked in and he looked like, the only way I know how to describe him was like a Greek god. He was very tall, very big, muscly, well-built, had a magnetic smile, blue eyes, blonde hair. I mean, he was just, when he walked into a room, people noticed. And at one point, he sought me out, which I found was very flattering because I grew up pretty insecure. And now looking back, it seems like abusers look for that, which I didn't appear that way. I was kind of sassy and, I was a party girl, but we got to talking. I ended up getting involved with him. He was very charming. It was like I met my Prince Charming, and I was I couldn't believe somebody like him would want anything to do with me. And so we started a relationship. One of the things that drew me to him was how he always wanted to know about me. He asked a lot of questions about my upbringing and just personal information, as if he was really interested in my story. And it really, it was something different that I'd never experienced before. But the control was very subtle. And over time, like one of the first times that he ever exploded, I had moved in with him, and I had found a recording device in his house. And I was wondering what it was for. He wasn't home. And he was recording my phone calls to like my parents or anybody else I was talking to. Wow. And I was already not very good at confrontation. So it took me a little while to psych myself up to even ask him what was going on. And that was the very first time that I had seen his explosive temper. And he immediately went for my throat and would just literally pick me up in thin air and just toss me around like a rag doll. He just, he did it with such ease, and it was terrifying. But because I did not have a sense of value in myself or self-respect, I just didn't know any of those things. I didn't grow up with that. I should have run right there, and I didn't. I stayed because I just thought somehow this has got to be my fault and I can make it better. And over time, things didn't get better, and he continued to be abusive, controlling. I was able to get away from him once, and he used to have me learn how to sign his name to things. And because he said that he would want me to, he wanted me to learn how to sign his name so that I could pay the bills and sign checks to his name, things like that. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought that was really cool. Well, when I ended up getting away the first time, he turned me into the bank saying that I was stealing from him. Oh, and really? Apparently that's how he tracked me down, was through them. I had left Virginia and come out to Colorado to live with my mom. I thought I was hiding, but he ended up tracking me down. And I should have gotten counseling in that period of time that I was gone, but I didn't. And so I ended up going back, because when I ended up talking to him, he, it was kind of like, well, if you wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have done that. And again, making it seem like it was my fault that things happened, that the abuse was there. So I ended up going back, and I got pregnant shortly after, which I can't say that it was a mistake, because I was blessed with the most magnificent thing that's ever happened to me, my daughter. But the abuse escalated, and it was 10 times worse than it was in the first place. Nobody could have told me that it would have escalated the way that it did the whole time that I was pregnant. I've always thought it was a miracle that my daughter was born normal and didn't have any issues. And I think the greatest part of my testimony is that the Lord chased me down and sought me out and rescued me from it. My daughter was 2 months old at the time. And one night, again, he used to keep me up in the middle of the night interrogating me about ridiculous things. And then I would have to get up and go to work the next day. And I had to leave one night because he made threats again. He went to the bathroom. I grabbed my daughter, who was in the car seat on the coffee table. I grabbed my purse, and I drove and didn't stop until I got to a police station a couple towns away, because he had me convinced that the neighborhood he grew up in, where we lived, that everybody knew him, including the police, and everybody liked him. So I didn't think I could trust anyone. And I filed a report. But when I realized that I had left without any diapers or food for my little girl, again, she was 2 months old, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go back. And so a woman that I worked with, who had also recently had a baby, I reached out to her. I guess I got her phone number from the operator, because that's what you did back then. And I didn't tell her what happened, but I told her that I had to leave my house suddenly and that I needed things for my baby. The clerk at the grocery store, the manager, wouldn't take her credit card so that I could buy things. So I ended up driving 45 minutes out to her house and spending the night. And again, I didn't tell her anything that happened because I was very ashamed. And it was just a horrible secret that I kept allowing things like that to happen to myself. And I was ashamed of telling people. So nobody knew, not even my family. And so she suspected that something was going on. And so the next day, I couldn't go back home. I ended up going and staying with another coworker with my daughter, Autumn. My husband ended up tracking me down again. He knew how to check my voicemail at work. He had just control of everything. And he ended up talking me into going back home. And so within the next week, I ended up going back to work. And the gentleman that was a head of security where I worked, he was also a retired police chief. He sought me out behind closed doors with my boss and told me that they could help me get out of this situation if that's what I wanted. They would help my daughter and I get away and get out of it. And I ended up giving him details of what had happened. It's the first time that I ever really talked to anybody about what was going on. My ex-husband he had spent time in prison, which when I met him, he told me that when he was younger, he used to drink and fight with his buddies, and he went to jail for a little bit. That's really all he said. And so when I found out that he had actually spent 5 years of a 10-year sentence for malicious wounding on his first wife, it was pretty terrifying. And so when I told my employers this, they kind of went on high alert, and they just said, look, when you're ready to do this, you come to work, bring your daughter, and we'll take care of the rest. And so it took me just a few days to psych myself up to do this, because I was terrified he would leave, but he would drop in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour later to check on me. So I didn't know if he was ever going to show up while I was carrying, trash bags out to the car full of clothes or whatever. And I wasn't even able to take that much. But one morning I actually went to work. I told this gentleman that I had done it. And from there, he put my vehicle in police storage. A female police officer came and picked my daughter and I up, took us to a woman's shelter 2 counties away, to ensure that he couldn't find us. And for the next month, we lived in that woman's shelter until we went back to court. My employers paid for lawyers for us. They paid my full salary for, I want to say 6 months to a year. I don't exactly remember the details. They paid for security guards when I went back to court against him. And things don't just happen that way. God did that for me.
Yes.
And process, I did not know the Lord at the time. I was not a Christian. I didn't know anything about being a Christian. I didn't know anything about God or Jesus. I could not figure out why my grandparents up in heaven were allowing my husband to continue to hurt me. That's just how little I knew about how it all worked. And so I eventually ended up moving out to Colorado. And I tried to live in Ohio, but it was too close to Virginia. My dad, who lived in Ohio, there were trees. He lived out in rural. And I was just constantly terrified that I was being watched and that he was going to hunt me down, kill me, and take my daughter. That was a real fear that I dealt with for a while. So I ended up coming out to Colorado to be with my mom. And my daughter and I, as soon as I came out here, I just felt a peace. I knew that distance made all the difference. Mm-hmm. And I eventually got sole custody of her. Back then, and I'm not sure how much has changed, but the court system, they didn't fully try to protect my daughter. My daughter still was able, she still had to go back to Virginia for visitation with him after a year of her being a year old. And it was terrifying for me because he was addicted to pornography. He had a very sick, unnatural appetite for sexual things and pornography. And I was just, it was terrifying knowing that my little girl would be that far away from me. And so anyway, within that first year, I started going to a program called Mothers of Preschoolers here in Colorado. It was at a church. I was able to meet some friends, and I started going to that church. And I got saved in that church. There was a pastor there, a visiting minister that had given an altar call at the end of one of his services. And he literally stood there and said, I am waiting for a woman to come forward that has gone through horrendous abuse. And I'm going to sit here and wait for her to come up until, so that she can come to Jesus and know the Lord. And I was so afraid. I knew he was talking about me, and I couldn't even go up by myself. I went to the nursery to get one of my only friends that I had at the time. And she was a big woman, wonderful friend. And she grabbed my hand and she marched me up there and she said, you're doing this. And that day I gave my life to the Lord. And I got baptized there not too long after that. And, the Lord rescued me from an awful situation. He rescued my daughter. And, I know that there's hope for all these ladies. I know that my situation was horrific and there were things that I went through. I went to see a therapist for a while, and she even told me that it was more like a prisoner of war that he did with the mental and emotional abuse and the, messing with your head and the psychological things that he would do. Because I see some of the posts where there are women that went through horrific physical things. And I feel blessed that it could have been so much worse for me. But I do, with all my heart, I believe that the Lord he chased me down and rescued me. And he's continued to do it over the last 28, 30 years. I've been going through, spiritual warfare classes at this new church that I've been going to the last few years. And because even after that, when I was away from that situation, I continued to make desperate decisions out of my insecurities and my brokenness that I never got healed from. And so I've been experiencing healing in the last couple of years that I've never known before. And I'm on my own. I left my third husband, and I'm happier than I've ever been because I've got healing now. And I no longer am afraid to be alone. I don't have the feeling to make desperate decisions like I used to. The Lord has just healed me from the abuse and anything else that I've dealt with throughout my whole life. And there's hope. There's so much hope.
Okay. I have a few questions that I want to ask you, but did you just say that you left your third husband?
Just within the last few months, yes.
Okay. And so what number husband was the one who was abusive?
Number one.
Okay, the first one. Because when you first said it, I didn't realize that y'all are married. So I know that you met at 27 years old. And how long were you all dating before you got married?
Couple months.
Okay, a few months. And then when did you notice that he began being abusive within,
Oh, it was within a few months. It didn't take long at all. But I didn't know that I didn't know that I should leave. I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the confidence in myself. I grew up with a biological father and 4 stepfathers. So I did not have the best example when it came to standing up for myself, knowing what I deserved, what I didn't deserve, self-respect. And so that kept me in that cycle because I just didn't know that I didn't have to stay in it.
And could you explain 4 stepfathers?
My mom was married 5 times.
Okay.
So I had a biological father, and then I had 4 stepfathers after that.
Okay. And so the first thing you said was something that he did that was kind of like, what is that about? Is recording your phone calls when you were talking to your parents. And how old were you when you saw him doing that?
Oh, it was within a few months of us being together.
Really?
Yeah.
And how old was he?
Oh, I want to say he was 6 or 7 years older than me. So I was 27, so he was already, in his 30s. But he would, even if I would tell him that, my mom called, just in conversation, hey, my mom called today. Oh, well, what'd you talk about? He wanted to know every detail. It was fine. But what it turned into was a few days later, a week or 2 later, hey, so tell me what you and your mom talked about again. Well, I already told you, but he didn't care. He wanted to hear it again. He wanted to hear all the details. And if anything changed in that story, if I'd added something that I didn't put in the first time, or if I left something out, he would just jump on the wagon that I was lying, and it turned into a night long of interrogation about all kinds of things. And so
go ahead.
No, I just stopped telling him when I would talk to my mom, or I would stop. I started getting to where I had to be 5 steps ahead of him in almost any situation when it came to the head games that he would try to play. And it was exhausting.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I just wonder, like, why was he so insecure? I mean, have you ever asked him that? Or why did he have trusted? Why, what was it that he didn't trust?
Well, his father was really abusive. He was really abusive to him, especially, and he was very abusive to his mom. So he learned the behavior and the pattern, and he grew up with that. He just, it was his normal way of life. But he the paranoia in him was much worse when I left him and came back, because he knew that I had already left, and the control was worse. If he left marks on me, I didn't go to work for a couple days because he didn't want anybody to see it. He was afraid that I would go to the police or something. So he would ask me really dumb questions. How many people have you been with? What did you do with them? Show me in this room the size of their private parts, and tell me exactly what you did with them every time you had sex. I mean, he was just really obsessive, and it was just so unnatural and very messed up.
Yeah. And so that's what I was going to ask, because it wasn't clear. So he was physically abusive.
Yes.
And when like how much longer did it take for you to experience the physical abuse from when you got married?
It actually happened. It actually started before we were married.
Really?
And I married him anyway.
Oh, wow. So you
Because
married.
I kept thinking that he would change. I kept hoping if I do everything just right, if I do everything perfectly, he won't do this anymore. And I think that's the mindset. You just get brainwashed. And he would literally, my credit wasn't that great at the time, and he would literally say, you don't have good credit. Nobody's ever going to want you. You're not going to be able to make it without me. I'm the one that takes care of you. Whenever he would get mad at me, lock me out of the house, and I would be sitting on the front doorstep, he would make sure he had my purse. He'd make sure he had any kind of identification. One of the times when I was very pregnant, we were driving down the highway. He asked me a question about something. I can't remember. It has something to do with my dad, I think. And he started grabbing the back of my head and smacking my head into the dashboard and the window, just yelling at me. I ended up getting a pretty good fat lip. We pulled into a McDonald's parking lot, and we were actually on my way to my boss's house to get some furniture from her. And he drops me off in the McDonald's parking lot, takes my purse, takes any kind of credit card, cash, money, anything that I could use to get help, takes it out of my purse, throws my purse at me, and tells me to get out. And I ended up going into the McDonald's with a bloody fat lip, and I was visibly pregnant. And I asked for a cup of ice. And I went into the bathroom, and I just didn't know what to do. I had nobody to call because nobody knew what was going on in my home life. And I put ice on my lip, and I just kind of felt lost. And I remember walking back out to the front of the McDonald's, and I looked out in the parking lot, and he was still sitting out there in the parking lot in the U-Haul van that we used because we were going to get furniture. And as soon as I walked out, he pulled around and told me to get in, and he acted like nothing happened. And we proceeded to go to my boss's house. And of course, she asked me what happened because I had a big, flat, bloody lip. And I just, same thing that other people say. I fell. I bumped my head. I got clumsy because I'm so pregnant, whatever. And we got the furniture and we went back home. And he would literally just explode. It was almost as if he would just not be himself. And one of my greatest fears was that he would kill me in a state like that because he honestly didn't seem to always know what he was doing when he did it.
So when y'all was on y'all way to pick up furniture, he just randomly took your head and started bashing it against the
Well, he was asking me questions. He was asking me questions, did your dad know that you were going to leave me the first time? Did your dad know this? And I mean, he just this crazy thought process would go through his head, and then out of the blue, he would just start asking questions. And if he didn't like the answer, then things would start getting very heated. And it was never, I never fought back. I never raised my voice to him. I was terrified of him. So I just waited for it to be over.
Wow. And so how long did you stay with him? How long did you stay married to him?
3 years.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem like very long, but at the time it seemed like forever.
Okay. So you ended up did he ended up going to jail again?
No.
Oh, he didn't.
Nope, he never did. When I pressed charges, we went to court, and he was terrified of going back to jail. And so my lawyers suggested to me, my greatest goal was to get out of state and physically get as far away from him as I could, because I knew that it would limit his control over my daughter and I. And so I made a deal that if I would drop the assault charge, because he would have gone back to jail not very long anyway, that if I would drop the assault charge, that I would want to leave the state with my daughter. And so he agreed to it. And that was ultimately what I wanted anyway. So, and he eventually ended up finding someone else, which was terrifying for me, knowing that my daughter was with him through the visitations, 2,000 miles away from me, while he was with a new woman that he ended up marrying and abusing. So she did witness it, but that's one of the greatest issues, for the children, because the cycle continues unless they get drastic help.
And you know that he abused her because she called you?
She ended up calling me at one point, years later, and wanting to talk to me, wanting to know if he had done things to me too, because he told her that I was just the crazy one and I lied to him all the time. And, he didn't admit that he ever hurt me or anything. Just like he never told me what he did to his first wife.
Right. And what was one of the worst things that he's done to you?
There was one night that I was asleep in bed, and I was 7 or 8 months pregnant, and he would sit out and watch pornography until late at night. And then he would either come in and demand sex from me, or he would come in and want to start interrogating me, because he would sit out in the living room just thinking of all these crazy things again. And he came in and he was convinced that I was cheating on him. And when I was with him, I didn't even dare look at somebody, because I was always concerned that he would misinterpret it or whatever. And so he comes in and he sits on top of me while I'm under the covers. So I'm completely pinned under the covers. And he starts accusing me of cheating. And I'm just begging him to believe me that I'm not cheating. I promise, I swear I'm not cheating. And he just wouldn't believe me. He was in that state of mind where he just wouldn't hear it. And he grabbed my bathrobe tie off of my bathrobe, and he started choking me with it. And I almost passed out many times, because this went on for several hours.
What?
And I realized that the only way that I was going to get him to stop was to actually start making up stories. And so I started making up just ridiculous, irrational stories. And he would stop choking me for a little bit, but then he would say, okay, what else? And I'd say, nothing, that's it. And he'd say, no, I don't believe you. And so then I would have to make up another crazy story. I mean, stories that on my lunch break, while I'm 7 months pregnant, I was in the parking lot at the mall, and some guy just came up to me and asked me if I wanted to have sex. So we had sex in the back of the car.
So you just started making stuff up like that?
I had to. Wow. I had to. It made him stop, like temporarily. And so then he wanted to know how we had sex. And, so eventually he was so angry because he thought that all of these stories were true. And he forced his fist up inside me, convincing me that the baby was going to need the room anyway. And then he just was just really awful after that, forcing himself in my mouth. And while he was doing that to me down below. And so eventually he calmed down and he made me get in the shower with him. And he just literally it's almost like he came back to himself and he said, was any of that true? And then I sit there and I think, I wonder what the right answer is here, because I'm standing here naked in a shower with him and I'm terrified. What do I say now? Mm-hmm. But he had already snapped out of it and he was calm again. And I just told him that he made me lie. He made me make up all that stuff because he wouldn't stop choking me. After my daughter was born, he was convinced he wanted me to take a polygraph. And so he took me to a gentleman that was a retired FBI or whatever. And he had me do a polygraph test. And I had already met this man while I was pregnant because Gary took me there while I was pregnant. And I was so scared that I was just crying and sobbing while he went in to talk to the guy. And then he comes out and he says, well, the guy won't do the polygraph because he said you're obviously guilty because you're just sitting out here crying. And he was really angry. So after I had Autumn, he made me go back to the same guy. Well, this guy realized that my husband was crazy. And he sat me down and he said, how can we answer these questions so that you will come out of this okay? And my husband had given him a piece of paper with questions on it. And the mistake that the man made was writing down the answers on that piece of paper. And then my husband wanted it back after it was all done. So the gentleman and I thought that we had worked out an agreement that it was all going to be good. But then my husband wanted that piece of paper back and he realized that man was trying to help me. And I got one of the worst beatings out of that. And my daughter was in the back seat of the car. We were driving down the highway and it continued when we got home. He was throwing a marble coffee table around, throwing me around, kicking me while I was down. And my daughter's in a car seat in the middle of all of it. And I even brought all of that up in court because I wanted to show how dangerous he was and that he could have hurt her in the middle of it. Yeah. And he was awarded visitation. So it was just things like that were just really baffling at the time.
Wow. And so this was, okay, so he did the polygraph before and then he did it afterwards.
He tried to do it before. And when he came out and told me that the guy wouldn't do it because he just figured I was guilty because I was crying. When I got to work the next day, I called that man because I was so angry. And I said, how dare you think that you know what's going on here? And he said, well, I don't understand, ma'am. What are you talking about? And I told him what my husband said. And he said, no, that's not what happened. He said, your husband wanted to perform the polygraph. He wanted to be the one to ask you the questions. And I told him that that's not how it works here. And I wouldn't do it. That's why he left angry. But see, that's the kind of stuff that my husband would do and tell me. And so that was one of the first times I realized that, how he was messing with my head so much. He would leave the house and he would come home and he would say, so I ran into somebody that you know, and I found out some things you've been lying to me about. So you better start talking. And so it would just turn into instant terror because I didn't know what he was talking about. And it ended up that later on, that's just what he would do. He hadn't run into anybody.
He was just making I feel like he was just tormented in his own mind. So he was tormenting you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, he really sounds like he has mental issues.
There were demons involved in him.
Exactly.
I mean, I didn't know any of that at the time. Now I know. But yeah, he was an
And
evil
so,
man.
yeah, and so you said that he was really struggling heavily with pornography
In the
and
worst way.
in
It
the
was awful.
would he watch like child porn? Is that why you were scared?
No, no, not that I know of. I did suspect
Mm-hmm.
there were. He had videos. He had all kinds of hardcore videos. He had videos of people having sex with animals, which I didn't even know existed until I
Mm-hmm.
met him. Um, he was always trying to get me to be with another woman, which I thank God never did. I just, he liked. When I met him, he had a son, and the son's mother was 16 years old when she met Gary, and he was in his 20s. I knew that he liked younger girls.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I met his daughter, she was almost a teenager, and she literally looked at me and said, "Wow, you're the oldest. You're the oldest. You're one of the oldest ones my dad's ever been with." And I thought, "What?" I was 27 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh yeah.
but it was just, I just suspected. And then one of the other fears was that his son was starting to be already show signs of being messed up also.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that he was exposed to the pornography because Gary never tried to hide it. And so my daughter would be left sitting up alone with the son
Mm-hmm.
while, Gary would go to bed at night. And that was one of my greatest fears, was that her own brother could be doing things, but only because that's what he was watching. That's what he was exposed to.
Yeah, and that happens.
Every
It,
time that my daughter came back from visits, I would take her to the doctor to see if she had been penetrated in any way. It was
mm,
terrible that I did that, but
yeah,
I had to know.
yeah. Did as she became an adult, did she ever like clear your mind to let you know that nothing happened or?
No, there was a time when she actually came to me, and she suspected that something had happened to her because as she became older and she started, dating, she knew that it felt good when someone touched her down there, but she didn't know how. She didn't know why she knew that.
Mm,
And so I do think that she was abused. She thinks that she was abused. She just can't remember the details.
mm. And how's her relationship with her father now?
She doesn't have one. As she got older, like maybe 4 or 5, she would call me 5 times a day wanting to come home because she didn't like being there. She used to call him the mean daddy that lived far away.
Wow.
And when she got to be, I want to say it was 8 or 9, she finally stood up and just, when she was supposed to go back for most of the summer one time, she just told him, she said, "I don't want to come back there." And she was crying. And he literally said, "I don't want you to come back here anyway, because I don't want to see you." And he just talked to her that way because he was angry because she didn't want to come. And she has not seen him since. There's been no
Wow.
relationship, contact at all. And that's what I prayed for years.
Mm,
I
wow.
wanted God to take him out of her life.
Wow. And was she like 25?
She's 28 now,
28? She's 28. Okay.
and she's
Wow.
married. She's a good husband. She's got 2 beautiful children. And I thank God every day that he has nothing to do with our family anymore. He has no contact, nothing.
Wow. And that's what I was going to ask you. Like, where is he now? What is he doing now?
He's not well. He's a sickly man with in congestive heart failure, and he's not well, and he hasn't been for years, which
Mm,
is sad. But you cannot have a good life when you treat people the way that somebody like that does. It's
yeah.
just sad.
And he's still married to the person who ended up coming to you asking you questions? She left him
No,
too.
yes, she did.
Wow. And so I wonder, how did these affect your other relationships, because I didn't realize you were married a few extra times?
Well, so
Hmm.
about when my daughter was a year and a half and we were living out here in Colorado, my mom introduced me to a good Christian man. He had a computer business, and she just kept telling me, Mary, he's such a good Christian man. He'll be safe. And I thought he would be safe too. I thought he would be a great guy. And we ended up getting married. He had two boys that turned out to be wonderful stepsons. But he never physically abused me, but he was very controlling and manipulative and narcissistic. And we became leaders at our church for 10 years. I taught children's church. I was involved with the women's ministry, and he would literally scold me in the foyer before we'd go up to minister. He was just very. He wasn't what I would think to be as a Christian man, Christian husband, and as soon as I realized my daughter was maybe 12 or 13, as soon as I realized that she knew what was going on, and she literally came to me one day and just started yelling at me, why are you letting him treat you that way? Why do you let him talk to you that way? Why do you let that happen? And that's when I just realized, I thought I was staying for you so that you could have a solid family life, a better, and so I ended up leaving. And I didn't really talk to many people at the church because, they would say, oh, well, you're not standing in faith enough, and you need to keep praying. And I was like, I have been praying. I've been praying for years, and I've been staying in this situation, feeling like I'm married to my father and not my husband because he's treating me like a child all the time. If I messed up the checkbook, he would take the checkbook away from me and give me cash to spend at times. And so he might not have ever physically hit me or anything, but he was abusive in different ways. And so when I left him, my high school sweetheart found me from back in Virginia, and we started talking, and so I thought that he would be safe. And I had a 14-year-old daughter that I didn't think that I could take care of on my own. I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to give her everything that she wanted. And so I got together with my high school sweetheart. He ended up moving out here, which was a mistake because he was not a believer, but I married him anyway. And that set me back 12 years because I spent 12 years being with someone that wasn't saved. I compromised my faith for a while. I didn't stop believing. I didn't stop praying or anything, but I wasn't living for God the way that I needed to. And so, and he wasn't abusive in any way at all, not controlling. He was more so intelligent that he was emotionally disconnected. And so I was neglected. I was living in a marriage. I went from being in 2 abusive marriages to being in one to where I felt unloved, unwanted, and alone and very lonely. So we were ultimately just friends for 12 years because literally in every sense of the word, that's all we were. And so I started a couple of years ago. I told you that I house sit, and I felt like the Lord just started opening up these doors for me to house sit like 2 or 3 hours away from home. And I was stuck up in the mountains in these beautiful homes for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And I started having this hunger and this need to just restore my relationship with God because I was so unhappy. And I did. Through a whole winter, I started just becoming closer and praying and just putting God first again. Listening to my Christian music, like I love to listen to it all the time. That's all I ever want going through my head. And I started taking some spiritual warfare classes at church. And I started going through this program where I met with 2 ladies every Sunday to go through the things that I've gone through in my life and trying to get healing and overcome strongholds and generational curses that I had dealt with my whole life. And so the process was amazing. And I went through a deliverance to deal with all of that. And it has completely changed me in such a way. I'm free from things that I've dealt with my whole entire life, the insecurities, the generational curses from, me feeling like I had no value unless I was with a man. I don't have any of that anymore. And so now I'm on my own, and it's been 6 months. The Lord has blessed me with a home that I didn't have anywhere to go. But I felt like the Lord just said, look, if you would close this door that you never should have opened, I will take care of you. You don't have to be afraid that you're not going to be able to take care of yourself. And I trusted him this whole way. And he's done exactly that. He's been taking care of me. He's been my husband that I've never had. He's been the best father that I've ever had. I just never realized it. He's always been the person I needed.
Yeah.
So now I'm living so much freedom, and I am, I don't have that feeling of desperation of being alone. I used to get panic attacks when I was alone. Like I had to find somebody. I had to be with somebody. And I don't have that anymore. It's gone.
That is a great thing to be delivered from, to just feel like you have to need, because, and I'm glad you said that, because I was wondering if you felt like marriage would save you.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure that was my process, because I grew up in that.
Right. And I feel like a lot of people even do it now, like it being a way out, or, I mean, obviously it does. Even when you see these celebrity women marrying, or these women marrying these celebrity men just for money. You see them getting pregnant by men who have money, they end up treating them very awful. And so they're just trying to get saved in some type of way, whether it be not wanting to grow old, like be alone and old, and so I just wanted to know, like, what kind of work did the first husband do?
He was in construction. He was in construction remodeling with his brother.
Okay. And so you married him for 3 years and got out of it. What about the second husband? What type of work did he do?
He had a computer business.
Like you said.
Repair. And then we were leaders in our church. So we were very involved in our church. I mean, there was a religious spirit there. We had to go to church 3 times a week. And we had to do that. Just very structured, and the rules and regulations. And it's just, that's not how it's supposed to be.
It's not free. It's not free.
Oh. No, it's not. And now, at my church, I sing in the choir, and I'm not that great of a singer, but I love to sing. But it's just like, I have this whole new church family that I am just so happy with. And I'm a greeter. And so I get to, greet the people coming and just making friends. And, God's given me an amazing story, and I know that he wants me to do more with it. And I'm just waiting for him to show me what that means.
Yeah. And I think he's showing you. First it talks about telling the story, because we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Just speaking about it. And even as you begin to speak in the beginning, there are other women who will see this, and they're going to be like, wow, I'm going through that now. I'm not alone. And they're going to hear your message saying you need to get out, and you need to know that God will take care of you. They're going to be hearing these things. Even like the woman who shared her testimony. That's how you and I met, because she shared that testimony. And so I wanted to know, because I didn't get this one, how many years were you married to the second man?
12.
Okay, so you were married to your second man 12 years and the third man 12 years as well.
Yep, I was.
Wow, that is a long time.
I know. It was. Yeah. So I'm ready. God's restoring and redeeming my life. I live in a place in Colorado. I wasn't living. I was not living. I was just sitting around waiting, pulling, dragging, begging him to just live life with me. And he wasn't. And so now I'm hiking all the time, whether it's with friends from church or friends outside of church, or the dogs that I'm house sitting with, or alone. I go hiking alone, and I'm just having adventures, and I'm determined that for the next coming years, I'm going to start having adventures because I'm free and I'm experiencing this freedom and this joy that I've never had before. And I'm enjoying being with Mary. That's the biggest thing. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. And so I wanted to know, like what did the people at your church say when they heard about the scolding, and did they try to counsel you all to? And I know you said that you're supposed, they did say you're supposed to pray more, but what would they say to him?
Nothing. Nobody really. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't. There was one time that I tried to talk to our pastor about it, and it was back when cell phones first came out. So I was on the phone with my husband at the time, and I thought that I'd hung up with him. And so I called my pastor because I wanted to talk to him about things that were going on. Well, little did I know that the whole time that I'm talking to my pastor, my husband at the time was on the phone still, and he heard the whole conversation. And boy, I got in trouble for that one. But like I said, he never hit me or anything, but I would have to deal with 20-minute lectures and preaching to, and I always felt like I was getting in trouble for something, and it was just ridiculous. That's not how we're supposed to live, especially as a Christian wife.
Right. And so what did he say when you tried to leave? How did that go?
Well, because I don't deal with confrontation, or at least I didn't. And I went back to see my dad with my daughter, and I left him a letter. I left him a long letter explaining everything, and that I just, I didn't want to be in this marriage anymore. And so that's how I did it. Mm-hmm. And he didn't take it very well. He was upset and angry. And of course he, it was all my fault. I'm the one that, caused everything. And that's fine, because even my husband now, he is nice to my face and we're friends. But, he'll diss me to my daughter, and she even gets tired of talking to him now because she knows that he makes things up. He's not being truthful. But sometimes they're just in that state of mind where they just want to blame everybody else, and they can't take responsibility if they're part of it.
Yeah. And so, gotta be okay with that. And so you just kind of like, how did the divorce happen though? Was it like a non-contested or?
Well, so the second one was, and then this time, it's been fine. I think he just realized that we are very different, and he just decided, if this is what I wanted, then okay. We still have a dog together, and I go and pick up the dog every once in a while and bring him to my house, and I'm still helping him with business things on the computer to get him up to date for taxes. And so we're remaining friends, because that's really all we ever have been. There was nothing besides just being friends. And so I'm just in a really good place now, and I'm so thankful for everything God has done and what he's doing and what he's continuing to do. I'm very blessed.
And so you have one daughter, and that's nothing else with the other.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I wanted to know, like, what made you even marry the third one?
Well, because I didn't think I'd be able to take care of my daughter. She was 14 years old.
Okay.
And she was pretty headstrong. And so I just didn't have the guts. I didn't think that Mary could do it on her own.
Yeah. And how was her relationship with him?
It's good. It's good. So number two, she wanted him to adopt her throughout her whole life. and he never made it a priority. He never,
Really?
took the time to just make her feel like she was important enough. And when number 3 came around, he knew what was going on. And so he made it a point within the first 6 months of him being in her life. He
Oh, wow.
put the money out there and adopted her so that she could feel like a part of our family. So he's always been really good to her.
That's
Now,
awesome. I was going to say, so they have a pretty great relationship.
well, emotionally and like investing, like in the grandkids and stuff, he's just not, that's not him. He's got
Okay.
of his own that he doesn't even have relationships with. But if my daughter was to call him and need something and she does check on him, he would do whatever he had to do to make, to take care of her and do what she needed.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you have gotten to that place. I mean, with all the different abuse or types of abuse that goes on, people don't even make it this far. And I'm gonna tell you something after we get offline because I can't release it now. But I appreciate you, Miss Mari. I'm saying Mari. Is it Mary?
Mary, it's just Mary. It's okay.
Thank you, Miss Mary, for sharing your testimony with us. If there was one thing that you wanted to leave before we got off, what would that be?
I want the ladies to know that God is so good, and he sees and knows everything that you're going through. And if you would just call out to him, he is right there, and he will he will move mountains to come and rescue you. But he's not always going to get in the way of the free will he's given us. And we have to be the ones to just say, Lord, come and help me and show me a better way. And he does. He has got so many amazing things for us. It's not all about, he wants us to make him Lord of us, our life, so that we can go to heaven when we're not here on this earth anymore. But there's so much more than that in this life. He wants amazing things for us. And he wants us all to be healed and whole in our heart, soul, mind, in every area. And he has the power to do it.
Yeah, I think, one thing I do want to point out really quick before we get off is you said we have a free will that he's not going to violate. And a lot of, like, the first thing that, you said before you knew anything is you would call out and say to your mom or somebody who was in heaven, your grandparents.
My grandparents.
Why are you letting this person happen to me? And I think a lot of people get that confusion with God. Like, why are we letting, or why is he letting? And he doesn't violate people's free will to do that, whether, something, whether it's good or bad. But the thing is, when you pray, that causes that intervention.
It opens the door.
It opens the door.
There were people, somebody was praying for me. Mm-hmm. The company that I worked for, I remember there were a group of people that at lunchtime they would have a Bible study. And I was always curious about it because they were always so nice and very nice to me, everybody around them. And I was always curious, but I just never really, asked about it or anything. And I just, I know somebody had to have been praying for me in those moments, because God literally sought me out and chased me down and made a way for me to get out of that situation with my daughter.
Right. Well, I thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was, a groundbreaking testimony. You have went through some stuff and came out on a great side. And so I really appreciate you sharing this with us. Everyone, remember, we have these different segments that come on live every Wednesday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thinking of it, we have one that's going on right now. But thank you all so much once again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.